Let's be real. In a world that's just overflowing with pings, notifications, and endless scrolling, the battle for focus is something we all face. But what if the key to winning that battle lies in understanding a condition we so often misunderstand? Okay, let's dive into the science of ADHD and focus, using some amazing insights from neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman to uncover tools that can help pretty much anyone sharpen their concentration.
So, here's the game plan. We're going to start with the big puzzle of attention, then peek under the hood at the brain wiring behind it. After that, we'll explore the chemical and behavioral toolkits for improving focus, and wrap up with the massive challenge of staying focused in our digital world.
All right, let's get right to the heart of it. We tend to think of ADHD as just, an inability to pay attention. But the reality? It's way more complex, and honestly, a lot more fascinating than that.
This right here is the question that really defines the attention paradox. And it's something every single one of us has experienced, right? You can get completely lost in a video game or a good movie for hours, but trying to focus on that one boring but super important email, man, it feels like climbing a mountain. For someone with ADHD, that contrast is just turned up to 11.
And it's so important to get that ADHD is way more than just fidgeting. It hits our working memory, like when you forget a phone number the second after you hear it. It can even mess with how we perceive time itself. And then, of course, there's the classic pile system for organization, which usually just creates more chaos. It's a much bigger, broader challenge than most people think.
And this is the other side of that paradox, hyperfocus. It tells us something absolutely critical. People with ADHD don't have a deficit of attention. They have a tough time regulating their attention. The power for intense laser-like focus is totally there. It's just incredibly hard to aim it at things that aren't naturally fun or interesting. Okay, so if it's not a lack of ability to focus, what is actually going on inside the brain? Let's switch gears and look at the neurobiology to see how our brain's focus circuits are actually put together.
So, you can think of your brain as having two main networks that control your attention. First, you've got the default mode network. This is basically your brain's screensaver. It lights up when you're daydreaming or just letting your mind wander. Then there's the task-related network. This one kicks into gear when you really need to buckle down and concentrate on something specific. Now here's the crucial part. In a typical brain, these two networks work like a seesaw. When your task network goes up, your default mode network goes down. They're what's called anti-correlated. But in an ADHD brain, that seesaw is basically broken. Both networks can be fired up at the exact same time, which creates this kind of internal static, this neural noise that makes focusing on one thing incredibly difficult. So what's supposed to be running this seesaw? Well, according to Dr. Huberman, it's a chemical called dopamine, and he uses this absolutely brilliant analogy of an orchestra conductor. Dopamine's job is to direct these networks, telling one to quiet down while the other one performs. In ADHD, it's like the conductor is missing. Or maybe they're trying to lead the orchestra with a toothpick. The whole thing's a mess.
Understanding that dopamine is the conductor leads us straight to the tools that are designed to fix the orchestra. So let's start with the pharmacological stuff, the interventions that directly target this whole system.
This is the big idea behind most modern ADHD treatments. The theory is that when you don't have enough available dopamine in these key brain circuits, you get that neural noise we were talking about, all these extra neurons firing off when they shouldn't be. This makes it really hard for your brain to separate the signal, the thing you're trying to focus on, from all that background noise.
And this theory explains so much about behavior, right? People with ADHD are often, without even realizing it, drawn to things that give them a quick dopamine hit. And this isn't some kind of moral failing. It's a subconscious attempt to self-medicate. Their brain is just trying to turn up the volume on the conductor's instructions, whether that's with a quad-shot espresso or a candy bar.
Prescription medications work on the exact same principle, just in a much more controlled and precise way. Drugs like Ritalin and Adderall are stimulants, and what they do is directly increase the amount of available dopamine and another chemical, norepinephrine, in the brain. This effectively cranks up the volume on that conductor, which allows the brain to quiet the noise and finally engage the right networks for the task. But hey, medication isn't the only tool in the toolbox. There are other, non-pharmacological ways to support the brain's focus systems. So let's take a look at what diet and supplementation can do.
Okay, this is a really important idea from Dr. Huberman, the difference between mediation and modulation. A drug like Adderall mediates focus. It directly causes it to happen. But diet and supplements, they modulate it.
Think of them like a good sound engineer for the orchestra. They're not conducting, but they're making sure all the instruments are perfectly tuned and the acoustics in the room are just right, so they're supporting the whole process. So a key modulator is omega-3 fatty acids. Huberman points to research showing that specific amounts really matter. For mood benefits, you're looking for over 1,000 milligrams of something called EPA. But for attention and focus specifically, the key seems to be getting over 300 milligrams of DHA. This stuff helps make sure your brain's cell membranes are healthy and ready to receive those dopamine signals.
Another potential modulator to look at is phosphatidylserine. It's a key part of our cell membranes, and some studies, especially with kids, have shown that taking about 200 milligrams a day, especially when you combine it with those omega-3s, can actually help reduce ADHD symptoms. It's just another way to help tune up the instruments in the brain's orchestra.
Okay, this is where things get really empowering, because beyond what you put into your body, there are things you can actually do to physically rewire your brain for better focus. Let's look at some of the behavioral tools that can make this happen. First, we have to understand this weird thing called the attentional blink. Imagine you're watching letters flash on a screen, and you're told to spot the R and the Z. Most people will see the R, but for a split second right after, their attention blinks and they completely miss the Z, even if it's the very next letter. This tells us that distraction isn't always a failure to focus. Sometimes it's a result of over-focusing on one thing so hard that you become blind to the next.
So how in the world do we reduce these blinks? Well, Dr. Huberman highlights a study with a shockingly simple but powerful exercise. Just one time, for 17 minutes, people just sat quietly with their eyes closed and focused inward on their breathing, their heartbeat. That single session was shown to significantly and permanently reduce attentional blinks. It's like you're training your brain to be aware without clamping down so hard on one thing.
And here are 2 other quick tools. First, practice what's called panoramic vision. Just soften your gaze and try to take in your whole environment at once. This helps your brain shift into a state of relaxed awareness. And second, embrace a little subtle fidgeting. Tapping a foot can actually help burn off the brain's pent-up energy from movement, which paradoxically makes it easier for your mind to be still.
We've covered the brain, the chemistry, and the tools, but we really have to end by talking about the elephant in the room, which is, without a doubt, the single biggest challenge to all of our focus today.
And this really just says it all. A massive study of over 7,000 adolescents found this incredibly clear dividing line. The kids who used their smartphones for less than 60 minutes a day, they maintained a high capacity for attention. But for those who used them for more than an hour a day, their ability to focus took a major nosedive. The constant switching we do on our phones is literally training our brains for distraction.
And that really leaves us with the final question. We now have a much deeper understanding of how our focus systems work and the tools we can use to train them. We know the forces that are working against us every single day. So the power is really in our hands. Knowing what you know now, how are you going to choose to direct your most valuable resource, your attention?